This program is brought to you in partnership with the Central Bank of Nigeria.
Hello and welcome to Business Highlights on Trust TV. On the show, we take an analytical look at some of the major economic policies implemented, as well as developments in the business world and how they affect the average Nigerian out there. My name is Chamun Dabeng and I will be your host. Today on the show, we will be delving into food security. On Wednesday, the International Monetary Fund stated that Nigeria ranks amongst nations with the lowest food security, and food security is imperative to the survival of Nigerians, as well as economic activities surrounding food production. Now we'll be getting into that in just a moment.
This program is brought to you in partnership with the Central Bank of Nigeria.
Now, according to UNICEF, nearly 25 million Nigerians are at risk of facing hunger between June and August of 2023. Now, this is a projected increase from the estimated 17 million people currently at risk of food insecurity. The report also stated that 14.4 million people, including 385,000 IDPs in 21 states and Abuja, are already in food crisis. Now, this has been triggered by factors like the Russia-Ukraine war that has triggered global challenges, floods, droughts, high rates of inflation, and insecurity in the country. Now, my guest today has extensive experience with organizations like the World Bank, USAID, CDC, and FCDO. He is the country director for FHI 360, Iyarwa Apera. Thank you for joining us in the studio today.
Thank you for having me.
Now, in the 2022 Global Hunger Index, Nigeria ranked 103rd out of the 121 countries with a score of 27.3. Now, can you give us an overview of what the situation really is? What are we really facing in this country?
I mean, what we're facing, it's not too far from what the global challenge is. Perhaps us and a few other countries like Syria and co are worst off. A lot of factors add up to the situation we have today. What we could call, unfortunately, consistent attack on farmers and villagers who are responsible for farming and producing food, and therefore displacing them. As you know, out of our about 212 million population, or close to 73% are in our rural areas where our agricultural produce mostly happen. These people are displaced, as you quoted rightly. Over 14 million are in IDP camps in various states across the country. Now, that is in itself ugly, that you do not have people in the farming. The second issue, it's also that has built up gradually, the fact that we've ever remained subsistence farmers. We do not have just yet large-scale commercial farming that will drive that
to the point of exportation.
Not only exportation, but to the point of sufficiency. Right? We are as traditional as we ever used to be in terms of the produce as well. Yes, there have been a lot of variety improvements in either maize, cassava, etc., but there has been no concentrate or focus really and investment in trying to improve our farming methods. Now, this is added to the fact that poverty in itself, it's only on the increase. Now, the absolute poverty head count of Nigeria in about 2016 had put our figure to the extent of 62%. But the recent figure by MBS puts it at 40%. Now, there's no difference. Actually, it's gotten worse. The only thing, the methodology for that was changed, and that's why we came to 40%, which is the actual figure that it's supposed to be. But The multidimensional poverty index study pushed us to 63, like 133 million.
Yes.
Of the 200 million people are living under poverty.
More than half of the population.
More than half of the population. So, and of that number, 67% are amenity poor. Now, when you unpack amenity poor, you unpack to those who do not have access to health, those who do not have access to education, and those who are at risk of food security. And so when you look at that in depth, you see that it's also tied back to poverty. So poverty in itself, a driver. The crisis in the country that has displaced over 14 million, another driver. On maybe not deliberate policies to push to improving our commercial farming, another driver. Before even the global push, like you quoted in the Ukraine crisis, but even globally, beside the Ukraine crisis, constant drought across the world, especially in Africa, still sort of push us back to those areas of risk.
It seems that nowadays there's a lot of push to some of the global challenges, especially when it comes to some of the challenges we face here within the country. We say, oh, we are going through inflation, and part of the causes is the Russia-Ukraine war. We're going through this is the Russia-Ukraine war. We don't have that, it's the Russia-Ukraine war. But this has always been the case within Nigeria. We've not really had that much of food security.
Yes, it has. Like I said before, all of the factors that I traced back, over 4 factors that I did mention, has nothing to do with the Ukraine war. Mm-hmm. You know, how the rising poverty rates has nothing. That's maybe remote, very not too direct causes or can be attributed to the Ukraine war. Yeah, the poverty figure has been on the increase ever. Our poor produce have been increasing. The floods, the flash floods that happen in the north every year has been happening every year for the last how many years? Over 15 years. There has not been any concerted efforts to do as much as map the flood-prone areas and begin to bring up strategies that will enable us cash in before the floods.
All right, let's take a look at the prevalence of food insecurity in Nigeria. So even when you're actually taking a look at this, you can see that there has been an upward trend. Now, this is from 2014 to 2021. As of 2021, we're at 19.1%, and the figure obviously has only increased since then. Now, I would like to bring our attention to the population that we have. You made mention earlier on, you know, we have over 200 million Nigerians within the country. We have, according to GHI, our food insecurity index is currently at 23 in the 23 percentile anyway, 27.3, pardon me, and we're also ranking 103rd out of 121 countries. Now, looking at all of these factors, what are some of the consequences that we're going to be facing because of this lack of food security?
There's going to be a lot, right? So there's a popular adage that says a hungry man is an angry man. You will have pockets of reactions when people can't find food. That's the risk. You will have a lot of challenges with our health, malnutrition, and we've had a lot of malnutrition cases in Nigeria. That's only been the increase in the Sahel regions of the 5-6 northern states of Katsina, Zamfara, Jigawa, Yobe, right? This has not eased in any way. Rather, it has increased. So you've got those health challenges that will crop up, but you have the economic challenges because those people that are displaced who are farmers, their income is cut off. They can't farm, so they don't have access to the cash to even buy food, and they don't have food itself. What will then happen is that people are going to react. You might have pockets of riots here and there on civil unrest. That's on one side, but economically, we are going to be hard up. So the government, and we are going to turn to imports. And the rising inflation costs, it's only going to get worse because when we push a lot into importing food, right now rice is about how much? 50 kg, around
So it's just pushing
50,000, 60,000.
Yeah.
So you're only pushing the harsh economic crisis even deeper as it is now, with shortage of food. Because as it is now, we're importing quite a lot.
Yes.
Now it's going between now and July, food imports will need to triple almost if we are to take care of some of the immediate challenges. And once you do that, the attendant economic challenges are many. So economically, we are that heavy on the people itself is going to be very challenging, because even where you then find food, it's going to be very expensive to access. How many will be able to afford the food, right? So those that will not afford, you then leave them to the messes of the numerous health challenges that come with it. You leave them to the messes of the anger that will be built and the reaction thereof. And of course, you leave them with the messes of exploitations. When you look at some of the crises we're having around banditry, around insurgents, etc., you could also trace to the fact that these people simply don't have access to money, or have access to jobs, or have access to food. So they take to the streets, they take to the roads to rob, they take to kidnapping so that they can also fend for themselves. So the crime rate will also increase. So you're looking at a whole range of challenges that will come with food shortages that are very, very eminent. In fact,
it's
they've
almost like
started
a boomerang effect. You're throwing it out there and it's coming back even faster and worse.
Of course.
Now, I would like to take a look at the way, or I would like you to assess the way that funding has actually been managed. Now, we've had the African Development Bank has given, substantial funding for to improve the agricultural sector. The same thing with the World Bank. The same thing with even CBN developing the Anchors Borrowers program to ease things for farmers. But we're looking at the agricultural sector. Now, we cannot forget the fact that Nigeria itself is the ninth largest agricultural producers in the world. And meanwhile, we're struggling to produce even enough for our own country. Now, how would you say that these fundings have actually been managed, that we're not really seeing, it translate to the strength of the agricultural sector? And I would also like to point out that, even within the budget, there's only 1.1% that has been allocated to the agricultural sector.
You see, you cannot tackle agriculture sector in isolation. Where you have monies pushed in to boost agricultural produce or production, you have to also look at the infrastructure. Now, you have an infrastructure, it's also around a whole range of issues, right? Access roads to communities, security, simple amenities like water and access to water. There are sub-Saharan regions in Nigeria that rains are not sufficient, particularly in the north. And irrigation farming has to set in. There are no enough dams. So the money being pushed in is just simply being absorbed by the myriad of problems that farmers face around that. So for instance, a farmer gets access to financing, fertilizer, etc. in a remote area. That poor security security challenges have blocked the road. He cannot get those produce to the markets where folks can access it, which means two things. One, the food that he's produced will waste. Two, he will not have income on it. Three, the people that would easily get the food we also not have access to the food. So even if you give this farmer that amount of money, he needs access road to bring those produce from wherever he's producing it up to the markets. He needs basic infrastructure to also preserve and maintain his produce.
All right, I'll ask you to hold your horses there. We'll take a short break, and when we come back, we'll extend the conversation into, finding solutions. Don't go anywhere.
TV, documenting the Nigerian story.
This program is brought to you in partnership with the Central Bank of Nigeria.
You're welcome back to Business Highlights on Trust TV. My name is Chamun Dabeng, and I'm here with Country Director of FHI 360, Iyorwa Apera. You're welcome back. Now, before we left off, we were, still on the issue of food insecurity within the country, but we were taking a look at some of the consequences and some of the reasons why we're facing these consequences. Now, Mr. Apera, please continue what you were saying before we went on the break.
Okay, yeah, so one of the very last point around some of the challenges you face with trying to manage some of the resources that we have is the fact that the governance structure. Now, you have a nearly collapsed local government system in Nigeria. Prior to now, a few years ago, we had very strong agricultural development centers in all the political wards in the country. And these were where government was channeling some of the support to poor farmers at the local areas. Mm-hmm. I'm not very sure in how many states those structures still exist, right? Mm-hmm. Now, then you look at the agri-extension workers that were also supporting farmers with farmer education, new methods of farming, etc. When last has government employed? I mean, we work from our development lens, and we interact with communities and people in the field, and you don't see as much of that presence, right? Now, once that to improve the system, you have to go back to improve the governance structure. You have to give the responsibility to the local government authorities to develop grassroots agriculture by strengthening those structures, mm-hmm. reviving the agri-development centers, including getting the agri-extension officers that stays in these agri-development centers to support the farmers. Then you're going back to infrastructure and creating feeder roads to farms and farm settlements that folks will have to bring their products out. Then you're going to solve the big question of security, mm-hmm. and ensure that the farmers relocate or go back. Where it is completely impossible, then you need to be innovative in bringing out other technology-enhanced farming methods that will help boost agricultural produce. But I would think the federal government, state government need to actually declare an emergency in food security right now to really focus resources and channel attention to it. Otherwise, what we're facing is really, really going to be devastating if actions are not taken immediately.
All right, so I'd like to bring your attention back to the budget for the agricultural sector. We only have 1.1% of the budget going to the agri sector. I would like to know what you make of this. Is it enough? Are we investing enough in Nigeria's agricultural sector?
I would say, I mean, the resource constraint in the country, it's obvious. All of us were occasioned by the general recession that is global now. So every country is hit. We understand that, right? But we say the 1% is not enough. That we would say, I mean, 1% of the total budget to look after 212 million people. I mean, when you look at per head split of that budget, it's grossly inadequate. Right? And so you face those challenges. And this is also why some of this, the funding, I mean, when you look at funding from all donor agencies, development bank, and it's less than 1% of our GDP. So it's actually nothing, even though African Development Bank and Co are pushing the money, it's not as much, right? So you want it argumented, or perhaps you want government to come on board. However, government is also constrained. As Nigerians, we're also very aware of the global challenges, and we're very aware of the fall in oil prices. We're very aware of some of the crises we faced post-COVID and what COVID brought onto the entire world. In fact, almost all countries of the world went into recession after COVID, and they're all struggling. A lot of countries, big countries like the UK, I mean, for the first time in a long while, you're hearing strike actions in the UK almost every week. You know, so all countries are facing these challenges. So we will not put it on our government that we are where we are. We know there are global challenges. That said, we will also say that in critical sectors like agriculture, 1% is really inadequate to look after 200 million people.
All right, so speaking on global challenges, of course, a lot of the world is suffering from global inflation. Nigeria itself is facing high inflation rates. But looking at what is going on globally, where exactly does this place Nigeria, a country with over 200 million people? 133 million of their population is living in multidimensional poverty.
High risk, I would say, if I can use that and sort of unpack it. So we have a huge population. We have, what do we call it? We have reduced earnings in terms of our income as the oil prices have been affected, but our population has not stopped, right? The statistics experts have it that by 2030, 2050, we'll be going towards the 300 million mark and above.
Our growth rate is set at 2.7% annual growth rate.
Yes,
population.
so you will be going towards 300 million people in the next less than 10 years. The revenue is not going to improve drastically, let's be honest. The oil prices, global warming, climate change, it's forcing more and more countries to look the other way from the use of fuel, etc., right? So the oil revenue is not just going to increase that or improve significantly, except something really, really drastic happens. So you're going to face that. And so we're heading towards where we don't have enough resources to cater for the kind of population we have. So we need to take some drastic measures. You either look towards some really innovative ways of improving, and that's diversifying our economy, looking towards solid minerals, looking towards agriculture again, because we are about the 9th largest producer of agricultural produce, right? So We need to be deliberate about improving on that, and we need to be deliberate about switching from subsistence farming to commercial farming. We need to invest seriously in that, and to invest in that is to solve the security problem. Get these farmers back to their villages, back to their farmlands, for them to continue farming. Then support them with the right inputs, support them with the right amount of cash to survive on, for them to produce. Then concentrate on opening roads to the markets and creating good markets for these people. Then you look towards small-scale industries where basic processing industries could help enhance the value and quality of the food produced. Once you do that, you create a simple value chain that begins to employ people, begins to attract people into agricultural investments, and so you begin to build from that. But you need to start with the very basics by providing and strengthening those governance structures, by providing security and making sure that our farmers are back home. 14 million people displaced, and these are 14 million farmers, basically from Katsina to Zamfara, to Jigawa, to Benue, to Taraba, to Niger. All of these displaced are people that farm. They are all farmers that have been displaced, no one else. So you need to solve that problem to get these people back to the farm and onto their farmlands to continue the farming. Even if it's a subsistence level, that will cushion and will not be in this imminent danger of food crisis, right? So that investment needs to be done and needs to be done fast.
All right, I like the fact that you've taken it towards the area of solutions, being proactive about finding a solution to the many challenges that we're facing in this country. Now, I would like to quickly, within 30 seconds, because we don't have enough time, private sector players within the industry, what can they do to contribute to food security in the country?
Of course, private sector investments will continue to happen. Maybe perhaps, again, the operating environment has to be made attractive to them, right? So you encourage private sector investment where there's a conducive investment environment. It will not be where you have harsh fiscal policies and where you do not have security, where you put in a private sector, put a huge amount of money on a commercial farm, only for the farm to be burnt down the next day.
All right, I'm hearing that we've actually run out of time. But before we go, let me make one quick correction. Number of displaced people in Nigeria is 3.2 million.
3.2 million,
yes.
sorry, yeah, I should have also
just
got to
correct that real quick. But we have come to the end of our show for today, and I would like to thank my guests in the studio. Thank you so much, Country Director for FHI 360, Iyorwa Apera. Thank you so much for being a part of the show. And to our viewers out there, thank you so much for watching. Do not forget to follow us on our social media platforms. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. All you need to do is look up Trust TV News and you'll find us there. Well, my name is Chamun Dabeng. Come back again. Let's talk numbers.
This program is brought to you in partnership with the Central Bank of Nigeria.